Today I want to talk to you guys about assets versus liabilities. So stay tuned. My name is Jay, and welcome to Ask a Debt Collector. Now, I've been in the debt collection industry for over 15 years. I've done it all, from skip tracing to collecting to management, and I've owned 2 debt collection agencies. For the past 8 years, I've been the go-to guy for friends and family for questions regarding debt and credit, and now I want to be that person for you. If you have any questions, put them down in the comment section. I promise I'll answer those questions. Let's go. If you haven't had time, please be sure to like and subscribe to this video and maybe even share it with some of your friends. So, let's talk about assets versus liabilities, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a definition of what those are, and I'm actually going to read it. So we're going to start off with an asset. The definition is, in financial accounting, an asset is any resource owned or controlled by a business or economic entity. It is anything that can be used to produce positive income value. Assets represent values of ownership that can be converted into cash. So that's what an asset is, right? Now, let's read a definition of what a liability is. In financial accounting, a liability is defined as the future sacrifices of economic benefits that the entity is obliged to make to other entities as a result of past transactions or other past events. Once again, the reality is your average person probably doesn't know what an asset and a liability is, including myself. I didn't learn what an asset and a liability was until maybe I was about 28, 29 years old, and I got it from a book I read. The same person I'll bring up again, Robert Kiyosaki. But unfortunately, money is something that's not really taught in school. I mean, I remember when I was in elementary school, I think like the 5th grade, we had a thing called like Mid-City, so I learned how to write a check. So I know how to write a check, but I didn't learn anything about money. I didn't learn anything about assets and liability. And once again, these assets, liabilities, things about money is taught from your parents, right? And so unfortunately, if you had a parent who didn't understand financial freedom, didn't understand anything about money and the aspect of how to grow it and the difference between an asset and a liability, then chances are you'll fall under that same umbrella, unless obviously like myself, I read a book. I was raised by my grandmother. She never really taught me about money. She comes from what we consider the industrial age, which is a time and a place a long time ago where you actually worked for a company for 20 or 30 years. After that time span, that company took care of you until you died, right? That was the situation. So you go to college, you get a degree, you go work for a company for 20 or 30 years, and then that company takes care of you for the rest of your life. Now, we know that situation has changed, right? Most companies now, pension plans and all that stuff is a no good. What do they do now? They give what is called a 401k plan, right? Which is where you as a consumer have to basically wager your money, plus if you're lucky, the company you work for will give you some cash and match whatever it is that you're doing. But what happens? You put your money in the stock market. The average person has no idea about anything with regards to the stock market and the 401k plan. I remember sitting down in a room and the guy, okay, yeah, it's like such a big deal. You got a 401k plan, so you sit down with that broker and he basically tells you, okay, well, what do you want to do? And I just picked a few stock markets, not knowing anything about it. And, I put my money in there. And so then it was cool, hey, I allowed a certain percentage of each one of my checks to go into the stock market, into these ETFs that I knew nothing about, because the average person's working 9 to 5 and you just don't have time to necessarily learn about the stock market, but you're putting your money in there. So companies went from a pension plan where they actually take care of you to being like, hey, no, we can't afford to take care of these people because people are living a lot longer in the industrial age. people didn't live as long. I think the expectancy age was 65 or something like that. People now are living to 85 to 90. So that's an extra, 20 years that these companies have to take care of you. So of course they got together and say, hey, what can we do? We'll come out with a 401k plan. And nothing against a 401k plan. It's a good starter, but you have to understand, most of us don't understand anything with regards to the stock market, including myself. So what happens? You throw your money in there and you just sort of kind of hope at the end that you have it. Now, to give you a story about this, when the market crash happened, the housing bubble and the market crash happened around 2008, I specifically remember getting an old man on the phone who was basically bawling his eyes out. He was retired. He ended up having to go back and get a job because he had one of those 401k plans. He had over $3 million saved up, and it got wiped off. It got wiped out when this housing market crashed. Majority of his money and stocks were in banks as far as like housing goes, and he ended up losing everything. But not to go off on a tangent. So now to get back to asset and liabilities. Now, by definition for myself, if you have a pen and paper, you can write it down. It's pretty simple. An asset, and this is something I learned from Robert Kiyosaki, an asset is something that puts money into your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. Again, it's very easy. An asset puts money into your pocket. Liabilities take money from your pocket. So let's give you some examples of assets versus liabilities. Your home. Most people would think that your home is an asset, but by definition it isn't. Why? Because each month you got to fork over money to pay that mortgage, on top of the interest, on top of the taxes on that home, as well as if you have insurance on your home, which you should, you're going to have to pay those things out. So a house wouldn't be considered an asset, which is most people would think it's an asset, but it's not. It's a liability because it's taking money from you. Now your house can change from a liability to an asset. You want to know how? This is how. Let's say you have 5 bedrooms. You rented out 4 bedrooms and you lived in one of the bedrooms. Now, your mortgage and everything came out to $3,000, including taxes and everything. Now, with the rent of the other 4 rooms, if it exceeds the $3,000 that you got, as soon as it becomes $1 over the $3,000, then it becomes an asset because it's giving you money, $1 each month. So if your mortgage was $33,000 and you were making $3,001, then that home changes from from a liability to an asset. But as we know, it can go right back to liability. How? If 3 people move out, you can't find anybody to rent that, and then all of a sudden you're paying mortgage. Money's coming out of your pocket with regards to that. So that's very simple to understand. A car, same situation. People think it's an asset. Yes, if you were filling out some documentation for a loan at a bank, they would look at your house. They would look at that car possibly as an asset. But as long as you're paying insurance and you're paying the car payment on that car, you have to put gas in it, you have to keep the maintenance and so forth, it's a liability. The only way it becomes an asset is if, let's say, for instance, you went and financed 4 or 5 cars, you throw them on Turo, and you look at the maintenance of keeping the car, the insurance on the car, as well as your payments on that car, unless they were paid off. If the money that you're bringing in covers all those expenses and puts money in your pocket, then a car can become an asset and not a liability. So very simple. Assets put money into your pocket, liabilities take money from you. Now, what do wealthy people do? Now, I'm going to tell you like straight up, having liabilities is not bad at all, right? But it depends. Now, what wealthy people do, and it's something that I've learned and I've seen wealthy people do, unfortunately, unless you know someone wealthy or you read a book or you come around people who are wealthy, what wealthy people do is they allow their assets to pay for their liabilities. So, in one instance, let's say you wanted a brand new Lamborghini. The monthly payment on that Lamborghini is $2,500 a month, right? Which makes it a liability. What you would do is you would find some type of asset. Let's say you got a 12 unit apartment complex. After bills and everything was taken care of, you made $2,000 from that. You got to pocket that after you paid the mortgage on the place, after you paid the people who are managing the spot, the upkeep of the spot and all of that. Let's say you got a positive flow of $2,000, which will make that 12 unit apartment complex an asset. Then you take that $2,000 that you were getting, you take $1,200 of that, and you pay for the liability. That's what wealthy people do. They're always accumulating a lot of assets. The more assets you can that you can accumulate, the more liabilities you can afford to have. Now, of course, in America, we're taught backwards. What do? It's like buying a home is like your biggest asset, and getting yourself a car to getting back and forth to work. Yes, that's something that people have to do, but you have to understand that when you do those things, if it's not putting money into your pocket, what is it? A liability. So assets put money into your pocket, liabilities take money from your pocket. If you want to become wealthy, you acquire a lot of assets, you allow your assets to pay for your liabilities, and you're great, right? And that is true retirement, right? Instead of risking it in a 401k plan. Now, obviously, like I stated before, it's a good start, but you got to be able to understand what you're putting your money into, because you can put all your money into there, and like that consumer I dealt with many years back, you can lose it all in the blink of an eye. But if you understand the difference between an asset and a liability, you can become very wealthy. And that's what I'm working on accumulating assets and then allowing the assets to take care of the liabilities. Okay? Assets and liabilities. If you have any questions, put them down in the comment section. As always, you be great.